All right, our learning target today is I can solve a quadratic equation using quadratic formula. So in our class, so far we've learned two methods for solving quadratics. We learned how to solve them using the square root method, and that worked when we had standard form and the b value was 0, and also worked when we were given vertex form. So I had like a binomial square equal to a number. We could take the square root of both sides and solve. Then we learned how to use factored form when we have a quadratic in standard form that's factorable, and we factor it, and then we use zero product property to solve it. Now, sometimes we'll have a quadratic equation that's in standard form that's not factorable. So you're not going to be able to use the factoring method. You're not going to be able to, and you'll have a b value other than 0, so you can't use the square root method. So we're going to have the quadratic formula. So that's our lesson for today. So first off, you need to learn the formula. Quadratic formula is x equals opposite of b plus minus square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, and that is all over 2 times a. So remember your ABC. So when you have standard form, it's ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So a is the coefficient of x squared, b is the coefficient of x, and c is the constant or the number. I want to be clear about the plus minus sign here. That means most times we're going to have two solutions because it's going to be the opposite of b. There'll be a number here. It means plus the square root of whatever this value is. This comes out to be. And it's going to be this number minus whatever this value is. All right, so you have two different numbers on top, and then you'll divide by whatever 2a is. Okay, so most times we're going to get two solutions. All right, what's the exception to that rule? Well, if b squared minus 4ac equals 0, then the square root of 0 is 0. So then we'll get just one solution because it'll be this number plus 0, which is that number, and then it'll be this number minus 0, which is the same number. So if you get 0 in here, it's the only time you'll have just one solution. And then it is possible to have no real solution if the number inside the square root is a negative number. If it's negative, then there's going to be no real solution. Okay, so be careful when you're first doing this. When we give you practice, I'm not going to be giving you too many that have no real solution. So if you get a negative number in here, most times students made an error with their integers and simplifying here. So you want to double check those numbers. Here's our first example. So we're going to solve the quadratic equation. 3x squared minus 4 equals x. So first thing we have to do is rewrite the equation in standard form. Now sometimes we'll give it to you in standard form. You can skip this step, obviously. But this one we need to rewrite it. So what do? We subtract x from both sides. And that's how we get 3x squared minus 1x minus 4 equals 0. Step 2 is we need to determine our ABCs. So a is the coefficient of the x squared. So in this case, a is 3. B is the coefficient of x. Now be careful here. It just says minus x. Well, that's really saying minus 1x. So b is negative 1. And c is our constant, or just the number value here. In this case, it's negative 4. So there's our ABCs. All right, our next two steps are we're going to substitute the values a, b, c into the quadratic formula. So we're just going to substitute them in for the variables there. We're going to plug them in, basically. I want to use parentheses when I do that to show that I'm substituting that value in. And then we're going to simplify following the order of operations. All right, so you have to be very careful with this process. So I want you to be very detailed, show all the work. Don't try to reduce or simplify anything as you're going through this process. So first step should look like this. X equals opposite of negative 1, right? There's the b's negative 1. Boop, substitute it in. Plus and minus, square root. And then I put in parentheses the negative 1 squared. That is the b squared. Minus, that's a subtraction sign. Minus positive 4 times a, which is 3, times c, which is -4. And then it's all over 2 times the a, which is 2 times 3. Okay? This is your very first step, and I want to see this because if you have this right, I give you more points. When I do an accuracy check for you. If you don't show me this, I can't tell where you fell down. Because a lot of times students fall down. It's easy to see a mistake if you just substituted the wrong value for A here, for example. If you put in C, -4, we'd see it right away. It'd stick out like a sore thumb. Okay? So you got to do that. Now we can simplify. All right, so now we go to simplify. The opposite of -1 is +1. Plus minus the square root. Well, -1 squared is just 1. Again, this is a subtraction sign, so minus, and this 4 is actually positive. The mistake students make is they count this as a subtraction sign, and then they also count that as -4, and that is incorrect. If it helps you, you could change this to addition and make that a -4, if that helps. So you could do this, go plus, and then, I'm sorry, not a positive sign here, it'd be negative sign, -4. So you could do that if you want to add the opposite, by all means. All right, so now we have 1 plus or minus square root of 1 minus -48 all over 6 because 2 times 3 was the 6. So now we get x equals 1 plus minus the square root of 49 all over 6. So the square root of 49 is a nice perfect square, so this is going to come out pretty for this example. So we get x equals 1 plus minus 7 divided by 6. So then we're going to get x equals 1 plus 7 is 8. So that's how we get 8 over 6. And then x equals 1 minus 7 over 6. So that's going to be -6 over 6. All we got to do now is simplify, and we are done. So our final answer is x equals 4/3. You could put 1.33 if you want. And x equals -1. How do you get -1? -6 over +6 is -1. So those are your answers. There's your first one, solving by quadratic formula.